You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I need to start by thanking the New York Giants. And I seriously mean that. Thank you to the G-Men. The Yankees had just suffered another really tough loss, this time to a godforsaken Orioles team. That loss actually knocked the Yankees out of a playoff spot. At this very moment, the Yankees are out of the playoffs. So I'm really upset about that. I put on Thursday Night Football, and by the end of the game, I was really happy. I had forgotten all about the Yankees. So thank you. Every Giants fan on earth has a right to be absolutely furious over that loss. There are losses, and then there are back-breaking, debilitating losses. That's what the Giants suffered yesterday. You cannot lose that game. You had every opportunity to win it, and you just found a way to lose. You kept finding different ways to keep Washington in this game. And by the time the game was officially over, you lost. Joe Judge said something after the game was over that was 100% right. He said, don't put the blame on any one player. Don't put the blame on Slayton. Don't put the blame on Lawrence. Put the blame on all of us. Absolutely. 100%. But that extends to you. You come in as this taskmaster, a Bill Belichick disciple, a special teams ace. The Giants are going to be disciplined. They're going to play football the right way. We've seen who you really are. You're a joke. You come in saying the right things. You say the right things. That's all well and good. But if you can't back that up with what your team does on the field, you're another one of the terrible Giants head coaches that they've had in their history. You're right up there with Bill Arnsparger. You're right up there with Ray Handley. You're right up there with Ben McAdoo. You're right up there with Pat Shurmur. The Giants literally had this game won. On multiple occasions, they had this game won, and they blew it. That's on the coach. We got on Tom Coughlin for losing close games. We've got to get on Judge for the same thing. Penalties, mistakes. We've got to have great attention to detail. We've got to prepare the right way. Bull bleeping bleep. I'm sick and tired of hearing from people that the Giants have the pieces necessary to contend. I bought into it a little bit at the start of the season. Just a little bit. But there were people who seriously said that this Giants team could make some noise. Oh, you've got to be joking. Another 0-2 start. Something that the Giants have done for 5 straight seasons. Something that they've done in 8 of the last 9 seasons. It's a mark of futility that even the Jets haven't accomplished. The Giants are ahead by a mile. Hallelujah, we found something that the Jets are actually better at than the Giants. I'm seeing the same old thing from the Giants. This guy, Joe Judge, comes in and says he's going to clean up the culture. He's going to hold players accountable. It hasn't happened. Here's what ticks me off about Joe Judge. Okay? At the end of the season press conference last year, he says you're never going to see the Giants do what the Eagles did. And everyone rallies around him. Yeah, this is my guy. Let's go. Here's what people missed, though. That's not holding his team accountable. What Joe Judge is doing isn't working. That's clear as day. This guy is 6-12 in his first 18 games as a head coach. Go back to all the close games that the Giants lost last year. At Chicago, at LA, at Dallas, at Philly, against the Buccaneers. For God's sake, they start the season 1-7. You know what he should have said? He should have said, we're going to focus on winning more football games instead of making excuses. Instead of giving the cliche line that you hear him peddle. Trying to motivate Giants fans. Trying to motivate the players. No one believes in you. You've made it abundantly clear that you are in way over your head. You may say all the right things, but when the chips are down, it's the same old Giants. The reality is, the biggest job that Joe Judge had was developing Daniel Jones. And did Jones play well yesterday? The answer is yes. Okay, the throw to Slayton is a throw that very few quarterbacks can make. And let me tell you, Daniel Jones can throw the deep ball. He's done that many times throughout his career. He can make some really good throws. And we know that he can kill you with his legs. What's his new nickname? Not Danny Dimes, Vanilla Vic. I love that. That is hysterical. Here's the thing, though. Michael Vick was a 4-time Pro Bowler. Michael Vick is one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks in NFL history. Michael Vick made an NFC championship game. Daniel Jones isn't going to do any of those things. There's a big issue that Daniel Jones has. And it's something that we've seen him do almost every game. And it costs the Giants wins. It's the kind of thing that drives coaches nuts. What, you think I'm talking about his fumbles? No, I'm not talking about his fumbles. He didn't fumble yesterday. I'm talking about the lack of fourth quarter touchdowns. You know how many fourth quarter touchdowns Daniel Jones had last year? 4. through 16 games to only have 4 fourth quarter touchdowns is just terrible. To put that number into perspective, Drew Lock, Gardner Minshew, Nick Mullins, and Mitchell Trubisky all had more fourth quarter touchdowns than Jones did last year. It was an issue that no one was talking about. It reared its ugly head again yesterday. Numerous opportunities for Daniel Jones to make this a pretty easy win for the Giants, and he didn't do it. Let's go through the 4 fourth quarter drives. The first one resulted in a 52-yard field goal from Gano. The second one resulted in a 55-yard field goal from Gano. That was the drive where Nate Solder and Andrew Thomas committed back-to-back false start penalties. I understand that made it 3rd and 15 as opposed to 3rd and 5, but realize, at that point in the game, you're up 3 with 5.5 minutes left to go in the game. If you get a first down and then a touchdown, you're up 10. You're winning that game. 3rd and 15, Jones runs for 11 yards. Gano has to kick a field goal. What happens after that? The big play to J.D. McKissick followed up by the big touchdown throw to Ricky Seals-Jones. Washington's up 1. 4.5 minutes left. The Giants have all their timeouts at this point. So this is your moment, Jones. Drive down the field and put your team in a position to win. Jones went 1 for 4 on that drive. I understand that was the drive that Slayton had the touchdown in his hands and just dropped it. Terrible job by Slayton. No question about that. But Jones had other chances to move the chains. The first down run that had nothing? I mean, it's 2nd and 9? I mean, Barkley, come on, buddy. Look, I like you a lot. I think you're a really good running back, but 13 carries for 57 yards just isn't going to get the job done. Then the first pass to Slayton that no one talks about, which was broken up by Benjamin St-Juste. I mean, again, these are big moments. These are other chances that you have to move the chains. The only reason that the Giants took the lead was because James Bradbury made a great play in a game where he got burned constantly. Now, Troy Aikman explained this on the broadcast, but I'll say it again. What happened was Heineke didn't see Bradbury. He saw Tate Crowder in front of Terry McLaurin. When Crowder moved off him, he thought he had McLaurin wide open. He never saw Bradbury. That was a great play designed by Patrick Graham. A great job of execution by Crowder and Bradbury. Outstanding job by the Giants defense. But even then, though, 3rd and 7, the pass to Shepard, incomplete. Here's a crazy idea, get a first down. Here's a crazy idea, don't give Washington a chance to win the game at the end. Step up. Put the game on ice. There's a big difference between 1-1 and 0-2. Jones doesn't seem to know that. There are people saying, see, this is what Daniel Jones can do. He's great. He can be a franchise quarterback. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's examine the stats. 22 for 32 for 249 yards and a touchdown. When the offensive line gave him protection, he looked great. No question. And to the Giants O-line's credit, the second half of that game, they gave Jones time to work. They gave him time to let those deep balls develop. You can't throw the ball deep if the receiver doesn't have time to go long. Bad job in the first half, good job in the second half. Jones also had 9 rushes for 95 yards and a touchdown. He had more rushing yards yesterday than Eli Manning ever had in a season. The simple fact is, though, the Giants lost. He didn't play well enough to win. Alright, look at Taylor Heineke's numbers. He completed 34 of 46 passes for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yes, he threw the killer interception, but he engineered the drive down the field that resulted in Dustin Hopkins kicking the 43-yard field goal. The bottom line is, getting the win is the most important thing. I don't care what Mina Kimes says. Wins are meaningful for quarterbacks. And the reality is, Daniel Jones didn't do enough to win. Yes, he put up 29 points. No question. But it wasn't good enough to win. Let me ask you something. If you're given the choice between great quarterback play or a win, what are you taking? You're taking the win. I understand that usually great quarterback play will lead to a win. No question. But not for nothing, some of those big wins that the Giants had last year, Jones didn't play well. The win against Washington at MetLife Stadium, he was dreadful. The win against the Bengals, he wasn't that good. He was out for the Seahawks win. I've got to ding him for all this. Here's the thing. Jones played well, no question. But to quote the great Al Davis, just win, baby. I don't care about anything else. I care about winning games. That's all Giants fans care about. Just win games. Get back into the playoffs. Make it so you're not relying on the Eagles the last week of this season. If the Giants win one of those close games last year, no one cares about Nate Sudfeld. There's also another important point here. The quarterback is the leader of the team. He's the guy who you look to when things go bad. It's the most important position in sports. Whatever failure the offense has, whether it's a hold by C.J. Board, or a drop pass by Slayton, or a drop pass by Ingram last year, those are Jones's failures. It impacts him. It impacts the team. He's the leader of the team. I don't see how you can look past it. The reality is Daniel Jones is a bust. He'll never win anything with the Giants. By this point in Eli Manning's career, he showed that he had what it took to win in the NFL. In his second season, the Giants went 11-5. Yes, they got destroyed by the Panthers in the wild card game, an incredibly embarrassing game, but they won the division. At least you're there. At least you're in the playoffs. At least you had the third best offense in the league in terms of points per game. The Giants aren't anywhere close to that. What was the exercise that I did last year with the Jets? How would you assign a percentage of blame to Joe Douglas, Adam Gase, and Sam Darnold? I put the lion's share on Douglas, then Darnold, then Gase. We need to have that same conversation about the Giants. The reality is, 20% of this is on Jones, 20% of this is on Judge, and 60% of this is on Dave Gettleman. Because Dave Gettleman doesn't know how to identify winning football players. Who were the GOATs for the Giants yesterday? Jones, for not doing enough to win. Barkley, same thing, although I really like Barkley. Slayton for the drop. CJ Board for the hold. James Bradbury for getting burned. Nate Solder and Andrew Thomas, killer false start penalties. Lorenzo Carter, a killer offsides penalty that extended the last drive. And Dexter Lawrence for the same thing. Every guy who I just mentioned was brought in by Dave Gettleman. Before I go in on Gettleman, I do want to point out one quick thing, though. And this is important. I should have mentioned this earlier. I didn't, so better late than never. After the hold by Board, it was 1st and 10 at Washington's 22. 2 plays later, William Jackson committed DPI. So you've got 1st and 10 at the 13. You're in the red zone. You've got to score. You've got to settle for a field goal. That's a big moment. 1st and 10 at the 13. 3 points are better than nothing, but in a perfect world, you're getting that touchdown. I understand that Board was the GOAT on that drive, but 1st and 10 at the 13? Good quarterbacks score touchdowns in that spot. Jones didn't. Put 2 and 2 together. Dave Gettleman has run the Giants into the ground. He has made countless bad decisions. Hiring Shermer, drafting Jones, drafting Andrew Thomas, not addressing the O-line this year, hiring Joe Judge. It's been clear for a long time that Dave Gettleman cannot put together a winning organization. Under Gettleman, the Giants are 15 and 35. They have never had a season where they didn't finish with double-digit losses. This guy came in as the architect of the Panthers team that made Super Bowl 50. He lied. There's no other way to say it. He didn't draft Cam Newton. He was the one who let Josh Norman walk. You know what's funny about the Panthers? The NFC Championship game that year saw them destroy the Cardinals 49-15. That's the last playoff game that the Panthers won. If Dave Gettleman knew how to build winning football teams, the Panthers do something in 16, and in 2017, they beat the Saints. The reality is, this guy is inept. He's made a few good moves. I like Barkley. I think Saquon Barkley, when healthy, is a top 10 running back. Maybe even higher. The Leonard Williams trade looks great for him. The Blake Martinez signing looks great for him. Everything else, not so much. It's very easy to put the blame on Slayton. It's very easy to put the blame on Board. It's very easy to put the blame on Carter. It's very easy to put the blame on Lawrence. And yes, all four of those guys deserve the heat that they're getting. They're not winning football players. It's just that simple. But when you have so many losing football players on the same team, you've got to look at the guy who's putting all these guys in that spot, and that's the GM. That's Dave Gettleman. This guy is inept. There's no other word for it. Giants fans, towards the end of Jerry Reese's tenure, hated him. Let me tell you, Jerry Reese is George Young compared to Gettleman. I mean, here's the thing. You hire Judge, a nobody, a hire that I killed at the time. But what was the one good thing you could say about it? At least the Giants will be good on special teams. I don't know if I've ever seen offsides on a field goal try before. And it really was offsides. Like, the referees were calling everything close yesterday, but no, that was clearly offsides. That alone tells you that he's not a special teams guru. He's going to clean up the penalties? The Giants committed 11 penalties yesterday. They gave up 81 yards via those penalties. He's not cleaning up the penalties. It's not even close to being cleaned up. This is a joke. I could see this coming from a mile away. I was never sold on Judge. Never. Even when the Giants went on the winning streak at the end of the season. The big Seahawks win. Everyone's saying, this is it. We've got our guy. We've got the great defense. No. If you were that good, you would have won the close games that you lost. Here's the one good thing that's going to come from this year. It's going to motivate the Maras and the Tisches to make changes. Gettleman will be gone, Judge will be gone, and Daniel Jones will be gone. The new GM, maybe it's Louis Riddick, I hope it is for the Giants' sake, will come in and hopefully point this team in the right direction. 2 weeks into the season, and it's already wait till next year. That's what happens when you go 0-2. To start the year for the 5th straight year. The Giants are a joke. This once proud franchise is now inept. That loss yesterday was the textbook definition of an organizational loss. Alright, now it's time for me to make my 3 NFL picks. Went 0-3 last week. Nowhere to go but up. I'll say this in my defense, and yeah, I'm making an excuse here. It's really hard to make picks the first week of the season. You have no idea how these teams are going to play. Did anyone expect Jameis Winston to throw 5 touchdowns in week 1? Did anyone expect Jalen Hurts to have the game that he had? Did anyone expect the Niners to not feature Brandon Ayuk? Now that we've got a little bit of a better feel for things, it'll be easier to make picks. My 3 picks are all 1 o'clock games. I'll start with the Saints, -3.5 over the Panthers. I understand that the Panthers are home. I understand that they just beat the Jets by 5. But Sam Darnold did not impress me last week. He made like one great throw to Robbie Anderson, and that was about it. The Saints were nothing short of incredible against the Packers. Their offense was humming. Their defense was humming. I do think they'll win by more than a field goal. In the battle of two great running backs, Alvin Kamara versus Christian McCaffrey, I'm taking Kamara. Although I do think McCaffrey is the better player overall. Give me the Saints minus 3.5. As for the upset, I'm not in love with any this week. I'm going to go back to the well and pick the Jets plus 6. I actually think the Jets are going to win this game. The first game at MetLife Stadium with fans in the stands since the pandemic started. You know that Jets Nation is going to be out in full force to support Salah and Wilson in their first home game. Jamison Crowder's probably going to play. Keelan Cole's going to play. And Zach Wilson looked really good in the second half of the Panthers game. So, now that they have this first game under their belt, Salah, Wilson, LaFleur, guys like that, I think the Jets will play a complete game. Mac Jones looked great last week, but now that he has some tape, he'll fall off a little bit. Wilson could suffer the same thing, but I like the Jets plus 6. As for my other favorite, I like the Rams minus 3.5 over the Colts. I don't know how the Colts are just 3.5 point underdogs. I understand that Carson Wentz played well last week, but their defense was absolutely atrocious. Russell Wilson threw 4 touchdowns. Chris Carson had over 90 rushing yards. If that's what the Colts are going to do against the Seahawks, what are they going to do against the better NFC West team in the Rams? A Rams team that just sliced and diced a much better Bears defense for 34 points. I think this game is going to be a 2-touchdown win for the Rams. This could have been Rams minus 6, and I would have picked it. So my picks are the Saints minus 3.5, the Jets plus 6, and the Rams minus 3.5. Usually I'd follow this up with some college football Valk talk, but that'll come after the NBA Valk talk. Because there was something that happened on Twitter on Wednesday that caught my eye. It's still relevant today. It was a tweet from Nick Wright saying that there are a handful of Kyrie Irving trades that may make sense for the Nets. Irving's agents have intimated that if he was to be traded, he'd retire. In response to that, Kyrie Irving called Wright a puppet. Wright then responded, "If you're saying you didn't say you'd retire if you were traded, get upset with your agents, not me." And then Irving said the puppet doesn't know he's a puppet. Firstly, let me say that there is no chance on this earth that the Nets will trade Kyrie Irving. It will not happen. There's no way it's going to happen. None whatsoever. 0%. Write it in ink. Do I know that Kyrie Irving is going to be here long term? No, he may leave in free agency, but not after he wins a title with the Brooklyn Nets this year. Because I do think that's what the Nets are going to do. I think the Nets will beat the Lakers in 6 games. But even if the Lakers win, or even if the Nets don't make it to the NBA Finals, Kyrie may leave. Or he may resign. I don't know. The notion that he may be traded, though? Come on, what sense does that make? The Nets could have very easily traded Irving for James Harden. Because realize, when that trade was consummated, Irving was away from the team. But they stuck with Irving. They got Harden anyway. And this is the best big three that we've had in the NBA since LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. Irving's part of a roster that's one of the most talented in NBA history. To hint that the Nets would trade him is absurd. The thing that kind of confuses me is the puppet remark. The only thing that I can think of is that this was put out by Irving's agent to Nick Wright. Maybe, just maybe, players from other teams are texting Irving and they're saying, hey, when you hit free agency after this year, let's play together in City X. Perhaps Kyrie doesn't want to do that. Maybe he really likes it in Brooklyn. It gives him a great chance to win another title, there's no question. This is the franchise that he grew up rooting for. They can offer him the most money. Kyrie may not want to leave. So maybe the players are saying to Kyrie, hey, we've got these trades lined up. Not sure if Sean Marks would accept it, but our GM has said we're willing to do this. Meanwhile, Kyrie may be looking to use these recruitment pitches as motivation to Sean Marks to say, hey, get this deal done. I want to stay here. Let's sign the contract now. I don't know if that's what's happening. I don't know if that's not what's happening. But the puppet remark makes me think that Wright is being used as a conduit somewhat. That there is an ulterior motive here. The thing about him retiring, if he's traded, that's what Wright has an issue with. I think that's missing the point a little bit. I mean, only Wright knows for sure, but to reply to that tweet with the puppet doesn't know he's a puppet, listen to your master, it makes me think that Wright is being used somewhat. The question is, who's using him? Is it Kyrie? Is it his representation? Is it someone else? I don't know, but I think this is designed to motivate Sean Marks to get an extension done. I mean, Marks has said that he wants to sign Irving and Harden to extensions. The only thing that could be the issue is Kyrie going to get max money? Is he going to get 4 years like Durant got? There could be a couple things going on here, but the notion that Kyrie may play for another team this year is absurd. After this coming season, it's certainly possible. I hope it doesn't happen. I want Harden and Kyrie signed to extensions tomorrow. But again, not impossible. You gotta love Twitter Kyrie. Alright, now I'll give you the college football Valk talk. And I'll start with the game of the week. Alabama traveling to Gainesville to play Florida. It's kind of interesting that we're getting this matchup this early into the season. The last time these two teams went at it, it was a great game, 52-46. Alabama emerged victorious. That was on December 19th. To get this matchup on September 18th is really stunning. You're gonna see two different styles go at it. You've got an offense in Alabama that's a pro-style offense. A lot of guys there have the talent to become great NFLers. Bryce Young has gotten off to a great start. John Mechie's gotten off to a great start. Brian Robinson has some talent. Then you look at the Florida offense, and it's the typical college option offense. You've got two quarterbacks running the show in Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. I'll say this. Richardson has a hamstring injury, but he's listed as probable. Here's the thing that Florida has going for it, though. They have a great offensive line. Their offensive line is better than Bama's offensive line. Ethan White is incredibly talented. Same thing with Jean Delance, Kingsley Aguakun, Richard Gorage. It's one of the best O-lines in the nation. You look at Alabama, they've got a couple solid players, Evan Neal and Chris Owens, as their tackles, but after that it falls off. And I'll say this, Florida does have the defensive players necessary to make life difficult for the Tide. Guys like Zachary Carter, Princely Umanmielen, Rashad Torrance II, Gervin Dexter, and Jeremiah Moon are all talented players. The thing is, though, even though Bama's offense may be limited somewhat, they've scored over 40 points in both their games this year. They put up 44 against the U, and they put up 48 against Mercer. I don't see them doing that tomorrow. Their defense will carry them to victory. Even though they've got some injuries, Josh Jobe is a little banged up, and Will Anderson is questionable. They also have guys like Marcus Banks, Fidarian Mathis, Drew Sanders, Byron Young, Jalen Armour Davis, Henry To'o, Tim Smith, etc., etc. The list runs a mile long. These are all great defensive players. These are all players that could play on Sundays. Alabama won't put up any more than, let's say, 35 points. Granted, that's still great, but it's not the over 40 that they've put up in both their games this year. The thing is, though, Florida's going to have a tough time getting anything going offensively against this excellent Bama defense. I just don't think they're set up well for it. Roll Tide. Moving on now to Auburn, Penn State. A matchup that I'm really looking forward to. we've got two really good quarterbacks going at it in Bo Nix and Sean Clifford. Neither quarterback has thrown an interception this year. Nix is more of the traditional pocket passer, whereas Clifford likes to roll out and make stuff happen. They're both very good throwers, though. Like, these are two of the better quarterbacks in the nation. The thing that I don't like about Penn State is they really ask Clifford to do a lot. They have no running game. Noah Cain is a really bad running back. You think of the great Penn State running backs, guys like Franco Harris, Saquon Barkley, Kijana Carter, Blair Thomas, Curtis Enos. Cain has not done a good job in following those guys' footsteps. So Clifford has been forced to do a lot, namely getting the ball to his two big wide receivers, Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington. And when I say big, I mean big in the sense of their talent level. They're both under 6 feet. And the thing is, Auburn has the defense to make Clifford's life very difficult. You take a look at that secondary. Guys like Roger McCreary, Donovan Kaufman, Devin Geis, Smoke Monday, and Zion Puckett comprise a really good Tigers secondary. Auburn's also really good at getting to the quarterback, but Penn State has a solid offensive line. It makes you wonder why Cain hasn't been able to do more. I mean, I'll say this. The Nittany Lions have some talented players on defense also. Jaquan Brisker, Jesse Luketa, Arnold Ebiketie, Daquan Hardy, and Joey Porter Jr. But Auburn has a great O-line. It may be the best O-line in the nation. Brodarius Ham has been nothing short of fantastic in the early going. Killian Zier is really good. Keandre Jones, Austin Troxell, Tayshawn Manning, and Alec Jackson all have talent. I just don't like this matchup for Penn State. I think Auburn's just better than them. Even though it's in Pennsylvania, I gotta go with Auburn. The last game to talk about is ASU versus BYU. Two really well-rounded teams going at it. You've got the triple option Sun Devils offense versus the traditional BYU offense. Two really good defenses going at it. It's going to be great. ASU has three guys who you need to key in on offense. The quarterback, Jaden Daniels, and the running back, Rashad White and Daniel Angotti. They also have a good offensive line, anchored by their tackles, Kellen Deesh and Ben Scott, and their center, Donovan West. Meanwhile, their defense is really well-rounded. Michael Mattis, DJ Davidson, Tyler Johnson, Kyle Sowell, Chase Lucas, Darian Butler, etc., etc. I only scratched the surface of the Sun Devils defense. Herm Edwards has done a sensational job with ASU. Meanwhile, you look at BYU, Jaron Hall is a solid quarterback, really good dual threat player. Tyler Algier is one of the best running backs in the nation. Neil Powell is a big target in more ways than one. He has 11 catches for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's also 6'4" and 215 pounds. BYU has a really good O-line with James Empey, Blake Freeland, Clark Barrington, Connor Pay, and Harris LaChance. The thing that scares me a little bit about the Cougars is their defense isn't great. It's not bad, but it's not great. After Chase Ayu, Uriah Leatawa, and Isaiah Heron, the talent level really falls off. But I think that BYU can do enough to win this game. It's in Provo. I think Hall will be good. I think Algier will be good. I think Powell will be really good. It wouldn't stun me if ASU won, but I'll go with BYU. There were a couple deaths in the sports world that I want to talk about. The first is that of Lou Angotti, who died yesterday at the age of 83. It's okay if you don't know the name Lou Angotti. Not exactly the most household name, but from the late 60s to the mid-70s, he was a solid player. It took him a while to find his footing in the NHL. He came up with the Rangers, didn't do much for him. Then he went to the Blackhawks and didn't do much for him. He was left unprotected in the 1967 expansion draft when the NHL doubled in size from 6 to 12. He lasted until the 6th round, where the Flyers took him. With the Flyers, Angotti had his best season. He had 49 points in 70 games. He was their best player. He's actually the answer to a good trivia question. Who's the first captain in Flyers history? Keith Allen really helped to develop him. Allen was a good coach for the Flyers. So when Angotti was traded to the Penguins, he was able to keep his good play up. He had 37 points in 71 games. He played with a high intensity. He was very fast. Allen helped clean up his defensive game a little bit. So Angotti had 37 points in 71 games. Yes, he was a minus 22, but for the 68-69 Penguins, in their second year of existence, that was actually pretty good. Then when he went back to the Blackhawks, he was a different player. He was the kind of guy who the Blackhawks wouldn't leave unprotected again. He put up 2 really good seasons for the Blackhawks. In 69-70, he had 38 points in 70 games, and his last year for the Blackhawks, 72-73, he had 37 points in 77 games. The Blackhawks went on to the Stanley Cup Finals that year. They beat the Blues and the Rangers in the quarterfinals and semifinals respectively in 5 games. But the Habs beat the Blackhawks in 6 games. Angotti had one more good year. It was with the St. Louis Blues. He had 35 points in 51 games. He tried his hand at coaching, wasn't really good at it. but he was a solid player. No question about that. The second player to tell you about is the big one, Roger Brown. He died today at the age of 84. Roger Brown is one of the most underrated defensive linemen of all time. And that is through no fault of his own. Think about when he played. From 1960 to 1969. He was playing in the same era as some of the best defensive linemen in NFL history. Guys like Willie Davis, Henry Jordan, Deacon Jones, Bob Lilly, Merlin Olsen, Bobby Bell, Buck Buchanan, Jim Marshall, Carl Eller, Gino Marchetti, Andy Robustelli, etc., etc. But let me tell you, Brown may have been just as good as some of those guys. He was a great player at Maryland State College, now known as University of Maryland Eastern Shore. He was so good that he went into the College Football Hall of Fame. Now, it took him a season to make the transition from college to the NFL, but in 1961, he had 12 sacks. He followed that up with 13 sacks and 2 safeties. He sacked both Bart Starr and Johnny Unitas. That tied the record for most safeties in a season. In fact, he still holds that record along with 18 other players. Now, the star game is important because the 62 Packers went 13-1. Guess who their one loss was against? Roger Brown's Detroit Lions. The Lions won 26-14. Starr was sacked 10 times. 7 of those sacks, including the one that went for the safety, was by Roger Brown. The 62 season started a streak where Brown made the Pro Bowl every year. That streak held through the 67 season. In 62 and 63, Brown was a first-team All-Pro. Unfortunately for the Lions, they weren't able to capitalize on having a player like Brown. The Lions never made the playoffs with him. And it seemed like Brown would never make the playoffs. But then he got to the LA Rams. After Rosie Greer tore his Achilles, Brown slid in to replace him. When you think of the fearsome foursome, you think of Greer, Lamar Lundy, Merlin Olsen, and Deacon Jones. Let me tell you, Brown stepped in for Greer and didn't miss a beat. In fact, the only years that the fearsome foursome made the playoffs were 67 and 69. Roger Brown was there, not Greer. In 67, Roman Gabriel had one of his best seasons. He was finally able to put it all together. The Rams went 11-1-2. They lost to the Packers in the divisional round 28-7. In 69, the Rams went 11-3, but they lost to the Vikings 23-20. The low light of that game for the Rams was Roman Gabriel being sacked for a safety by Carl Eller. Brown was a mountain of a man, 6'5", at least 300 pounds. He was very athletic, one of the best defensive linemen of the 60s. He's in the Pro Football Researchers Association's Hall of Very Good. You can make the argument that he should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's how great he was. May Lou Angotti and Roger Brown both rest in peace. New York Jets show comes your way Monday morning. I'm going to be at the game, so the instant recap won't be as instant. Monday night, you're going to get a New York Yankees show. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.